Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about the latest turn of events in the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. So, this is in some sense the granddaddy of them all. When we first found out about the sort of ruthlessness and casual relationship with the facts that the administration and Department of Justice were going to apply when it comes to their signature initiatives here, immigration. But they made this terrible mistake of grabbing him and sending him down to CECOT, the terrible prison, and they just tried in every way to keep him from coming back. And then when they did, it was only after they had filed charges that, when you looked at them, seemed very sort of weak and a puffed up version of just a traffic stop that South Carolina officers had made, and then released him. But it started this real kind of chess match between judges who obviously thought he had been ill-treated and the administration that has tried at every turn to portray him as a terrible, nasty terrorist criminal, and has wanted to deport him, which is something that he would accept, he has said, but he wants it to be to a place that he can, live and have some connection to the society. And he's asked for Costa Rica, and they are hell-bent again to that's just too good for this guy who made the terrible mistake of being snagged by immigration authorities improperly. And they want to send him instead to Liberia or another country in Africa. And of course, the leverage of the courts are limited because the United States has a lot of leeway about where they'll send people. So right now, Kilmar Abrego Garcia is in a detention center, supposedly awaiting detention. That detention has been frozen by the judge who has his habeas corpus petition, which they didn't give him at first. This went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the court said, you got to give some kind of notice and opportunity to be heard. But it's always seemed to be a very rough situation for him, because even if he can delay things, once he either goes to criminal trial, they've said they wanted to actually have him face these charges. Now these charges look weak. And so what they had said is, we'll send you to a nice place. Just plead guilty to these charges. He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't, think he would be convicted. And so they said, too bad, we're sending you to Liberia. Well, you have the criminal charges, but once they're either dismissed or adjudicated, now it's just the U.S. and its its immigration authority. And judges have been, a little bit powerless, but have been trying to push the administration. How about just sending him to Costa Rica, et cetera? And the administration's been implacable. Nothing's too good for this guy. Okay. It turns out, and just discovered yesterday, that the judge who is overseeing his habeas corpus case, that's Judge Paula Zinnes, went back into the record, found the original order that Abrego Garcia made that everyone understood meant he couldn't be sent down to El Salvador, which is exactly where they sent him. That was the violation. And she found that, in fact, little technicality, and it really is a little technicality, but it's something that maybe turns the tables on the government. The judge who did that order never included an order of deportation. So it says, don't send him to El Salvador, but it doesn't say you can deport him. And so she has seized on this to basically say, you have no basis to deport him, U.S. You'd have to start all over again. He'd have to be able to raise his claims, etc. And if she's right there, it's going to be a real kind of complicated tangle for the U.S. Now, what they're going to try to say is, as they're saying again and again, when confronted with their mistakes all over the place, that's just a clerical error. It doesn't prevent us from really being able to send him. She is obviously, is Zinnis, trying to get them to just be reasonable and send him to Costa Rica. But what she's basically said is, I have this now, and he's made these claims. It could take me a long time to figure out, it would be an obvious due process violation to remove someone without a final order of removal. I think the entire structure the government has built crumbles if there's no final order of removal. And she's basically said she's going to take a while to think about this. The government says, well, this really was it. I don't know. There's no order of removal. So Judge Zinnis finally has some kind of leverage against the government. Now, I think she's using it, for all it's worth in a way that you could think a judge shouldn't or wouldn't do in the first instance. But this is so far from the first instance. They've just been confronted again and again and again with the U.S.'s malice. As Zinnis said, the guy's been to CECOT and back. You want to send him to Liberia where he has no cultural ties whatsoever. And by the way, not with the U.S. is saying it's a democracy. The State Department tells its citizens, don't go to Liberia. It's dangerous. Why not just send him to Costa Rica and we can be done with this? She also, by the way, had, and this has happened again and again, she wanted to get details about just how this negotiation where they landed on Liberia, et cetera, came about. Give me someone who knows what they're talking about, the so-called person most knowledgeable. And the guy who showed up had 1 5-minute Zoom with the people who really know. So he had nothing to say. And, they have done this repeatedly, not given the real people with knowledge, including with Judge Boasberg, basically showing up and saying nothing and not giving the actual account of what happened at the political level. So anyway, she said, this is all the Zinnis's lawyers are saying it's just retaliation for the embarrassment he caused Trump by fighting and being, again, having through no fault of his own been illegally taken. And she just said, why not give me a real reason why Costa Rica's off the table? This is the judges. It's so odd to me, and that's really being polite. So it's the area of, pretty strong plenary authority for the U.S., but she's wanting to somehow protect Abrego Garcia to the extent she can and see if they can't get to a final solution where Costa Rica is the place he goes, where he said he would go. And the government is saying, well, that was okay before, but now it's off the table. We might have to give more to Costa Rica to make it happen. So, anyway, she's going to keep this. And then in the separate criminal proceeding down in Tennessee, supposed to start in January. So she's basically saying, we're in a stalemate here. There's a way, government, for you to break the stalemate and get him deported as you want. Just make it be Costa Rica rather than this punitive notion of sending him to a hellhole or the equivalent. So that's where things stand. And whereas before, you had the judges, and not only Zinnis, but saying, kind of having to throw up their hands and acknowledge what's unfair about it, but nothing they could do. Now, this little detail, and you got to turn square corners when dealing with the government. Rules is rules. It could be that the Fourth Circuit above her would say something like, oh, you're being overly technical. On the other hand, they've already had opinions where everybody knows, the whole courts know, that they're being just total first-class bastards to Abrego Garcia. So I don't know if you'll find a court to undo what she's done. So she may have found a legal way to actually, handcuff or freeze the whole proceedings and really put the administration to it. Do you want to deport them? Then let's do Costa Rica and be done with it. Otherwise, going to criminal trial where you could be really embarrassed, by the way. They tried to put it together using a supposed mastermind of the transporting of illegal alien scheme that I think could be a disaster on the stand. It could bring up everything they did, and they were pulling out all stops to get this guy and put the case together and say, aha, we'll bring him back. Now here are the criminal charges. All that gets exposed, or they do it what seems to the judge to be the sensible way. So it's actually, the tables have turned, not completely. It still remains in the U.S.'s ultimate authority to deport them and send them where they want, but ultimate just maybe got a lot longer, like a lot longer. And the practical upshot is, get reasonable, deport them to Costa Rica, or face, years of potential embarrassment and a criminal trial that may go awry and everything else. So I'll just end where I started, which is, this was the granddaddy of them all. This is March 15th, but it's still, it's what was the announcement of just how, hard-nosed and brass knuckles they would be. And it's still coming back. Boasberg is now still thinking of holding them in contempt for their actions that very night. And I think the whole kind of credibility crisis that the administration is having all over the federal courts basically started here. And if they don't try to, somehow clean it up and make their reputation with federal courts stronger and restore some modicum of credibility, I think the really tough week they've had in the federal courts will be replicated going forward. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.